Thank you, George. Hello, everyone. My final project is with the IKEA Foundation. I am working with them in understanding how their clean energy intervention in India can work. IKEA hopes to provide access to productive use of renewable energy, also known as pure technologies, as an intermediate step towards improving energy access, energy poverty, and then poverty itself. SDG 7 calls for ensuring access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy for all. As of 2019, roughly 1 billion people still do not have access to energy. IKEA Foundation is planning a 5-year, multi-million dollar strategy focusing on increasing pure access in rural India. Energy is a unique SDG in the sense that it has a direct role in every other SDG, which makes sense because in the modern world, nothing really works without power or energy. IKEA Foundation's focus is on investing in rural entrepreneurs by removing the barriers of affordability, demand, and availability of pure assets. To achieve that, IKEA need to understand the dynamics in play in rural India to maximize the impact of the intervention and receive recommendation on any potential improvements. With this in mind, I asked 4 key questions which will help guide IKEA's strategy, which are where, what, why, and how. The where question seeks to understand where the relevant populations for IKEA's interventions are located. Now, relevant population changes based on the area IKEA wants to focus on. For example, areas with the greatest number of people without electricity can be different from areas where credit loans are more widely available. So IKEA will need to know where the non-electrified populations are located if they have an energy infrastructure intervention. But they will need to know areas with better credit access if the intervention requires some degree of credit worthiness. So in this part, I divide rural India based on a bunch of different parameters. One assumption in this field is that energy access will lead to improved development outcomes. The literature is confused if this statement is true or not, which is why I decided to check for that in the what question. The what question is testing the relationship between energy access and development outcomes. This is an econometrically rigorous statistical model designed to estimate the impact of energy access on development outcomes such as poverty and wealth. My analysis did not find any significant results or relationship between energy access and development outcomes. Considering this insignificant relationship, I believed IKEA needed to know what does improve development outcomes. So my next question is why? Why does providing energy access not lead to improved development outcomes? This part consisted of qualitative interviews from experts, researchers, and practitioners working in energy access in India. And the key insight was that everyone focuses on supplying electricity. What they ignore is the beneficiary's ability to afford it. SDG 7 has an affordable aspect, which is the demand side problem and is usually ignored by everyone. So the idea is that in order to maximize its impact, IKEA's strategy needs to incorporate the demand side, which means supporting economic activity and growth, along with providing access to renewable energy sources. So now we have some idea of what IKEA needs to do. But the question is how? How can IKEA Foundation provide a financially viable solution that impacts and evaluates both the supply side as well as the demand side of energy access and energy poverty? For this part, I team up with Hejong to develop and design a development impact bond, DIB, for rural India. The DIB is specifically designed to provide an alternative financial mechanism whereby IKEA can use an evaluation-based solution for its renewable energy strategy in India, making its strategy much more inclusive, transparent, financially as well as environmentally sustainable. This is a brief snapshot of some of the findings from my project. The top left is a map of India for the where question. Below that is a regression table for the what. Top right is a quote from an interview from the why part, and the bottom right is the capital structure of the DIB from the how. Based on the research, I provide IKEA with 5 key recommendations. In the interest of time, I will talk about the most important one. One of the things that I've noticed, especially in the academic side and was reinforced with my conversations with practitioners, is that there is a tendency of trying to justify why IKEA or other foundations should provide electricity, meaning there is a need or a requirement to causally prove that providing energy access leads to better income, wealth, or other development outcomes. I do not agree with this statement. Energy access should be a right and not a privilege. No one has ever come to me and told me to justify why I need electricity or power. In the same sense, the poor and the underprivileged should not be held ransom to the fact that they have to improve their income, wealth, or whatever development outcome to receive the same benefits that everyone else in the world receives. Providing a single light bulb to a household in a remote village will probably not improve the household's income, but should that really stop us from trying nevertheless? So my recommendation to IKEA is that yes, metrics, evaluations, and causal relationships are important, but only to make our interventions more efficient, more sustainable, and more easily accessible. Using these tools and metrics as a barrier to not provide something as basic as electricity is wrong. So IKEA needs to be very careful when using such tools to dictate their interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shradhey. Challenging the last, I don't know, 20 years of energy and development discourse. I would expect nothing less from you. Thank you very much. I guess that begs the question, have you presented this to IKEA? And they must have been somewhat surprised. And how do they respond?
So yes, I have presented to them, and I'm surprised to say that they're happy to be surprised by this outcome, because that's what IKEA also believe, that everybody, because that's what usually happens, right? When these international NGOs or foundations come, the focus is that providing a village with solar panels, windmills, or whatever, providing them with electricity. What they don't understand is that there needs to be the affordable aspect incorporated as well, where people need to be able to afford them as well. So IKEA's strategy of investing in rural entrepreneurs focuses on building a demand side as well, where economic activity and economic growth will build up the capacity of the local population to be able to afford all these supply side solutions that are coming to their community. So yeah, I think they're happy.
Let me tell you something. I think that your econometric, that if you don't take into account demand, then your econometric is useless. Obviously, if people cannot afford, energy doesn't make a difference. So in my view, before you declare yourself as I sound critical, but I'm not. Before you declare yourself as an expert econometrician, try to develop a model that makes sense and take into account demand. If you can show that people that have demand can use electricity and people that don't have demand, you cannot use electricity, then you can make a statement. If you say that supply doesn't matter and you don't identify the condition, then you put yourself to sound someone that is a big alarmist, but no one will believe you. So to try to do it, try to develop a system that is well specified.
So the reason my system is not that well specified is to tackle that exact problem that you're talking about, that everybody understands that it's only the supply side which leads to development outcomes. And I was trying to see if
not everyone understands it.
I understand that it's a controversial topic and not everybody.
It's not a controversial topic. It's not. These are things. The point is this: you don't. The point is that you need to fight your fight whenever they belong. Anyone that thinks more than 2 minutes knows that lack of capacity to buy makes something irrelevant. So try to refine something that because you really have a great insight, but don't trivialize it. Make it really sophisticated. So that's the basic point. Because you have a great result, but it can be dismissed if you don't really make it refined.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, thank you, David. We have an interesting question from Muqtada, our friend who we miss in Pakistan. We're looking for you at some point to visit us. I hope all's going well there. So Muqtada was interested in a little bit like kind of the structure of the financing, without going into a lot of detail on the bond. What kind of equity? I mean, his question is around having the customers themselves have some equity in some of these projects. Is that built into it? Because he sees that as one formula for success.
So I will say that the general idea of equity is that you have a financial stake, and just by the nature of who the beneficiaries of such programs are, having that financial strength to be able to have that financial access and financial equity is a challenge in itself, meaning these are poor, underprivileged people, and they don't have the financial means to have that buy-in into that corporate financial structure that is there. But if you don't meet from the financial perspective and mostly from a communal perspective, where the community has a buy-in into the project, into whatever the local intervention is, then yes, that is very necessary if the project has to be successful. But I don't think the financial aspect or the financial understanding of equity is viable, but I may be wrong.
No, you can use your notion of right to generate financial equity. But you said people have right, that's nice. But right translate to some sort of minimal financial equity, like tier pricing, that you need to have a minimum financial equity or a certain lower bound that everyone must have. And then you translate your right to something that is quantifiable and meaningful.
Yeah, I mean that's a great point. But the only thing is that these things sort of become like a chicken and egg situation. You want to have the financial strength, but to have the financial strength, you need to have the infrastructure in place, and to have the infrastructure, you need the financial strength, and then you keep going into that perpetual circle without any starting point. So yeah.
Somewhat related to that. So question is if you if energy access were provided and free, would that change the equation? I guess that's kind of in response perhaps to David's question about kind of supply and demand.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's not a question, right? Like everybody deserves to have energy and power. And even I don't know if that will lead to higher incomes in 10, 20, 30 years, but irrespective of that, that question should not be asked by someone who does not have energy. Energy should be with everyone, and that's what they deserve. That's why I'm calling it a right, because we don't think of our lives without electricity or power. So we shouldn't ask the same question to people who don't have the same benefits.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And did you see either in the literature or what you've talked is there some kind of tipping point in terms of access to energy that really does begin to have an impact on? Okay. I mean, is there a point that really makes a difference?
There are studies. Look at the stuff that there are a lot of studies in Peru that show that access to electricity is crucial for development. And Maximo Torero is one name. Maximo Torero, he built his career on it. And he also identified the steps in electricity that really move you very fast up. And light bulb is one thing. The thing that was amazing, number 3, was television. So there was 1, 2, 3 that really made a big difference. Light bulb, refrigerator, it really, so there is a literature about it. It really, Torero was in the World Bank and he was a big guy. So there is a big literature. I'm sure some people do it in India too.
All right.